Position previews beginning right now. What's going on, YouTube? Hope you enjoyed the live mock draft on Tuesday night. And, of course, we have quarterbacks today. We have tight ends tomorrow. We're going to have a mailbag episode as well that we're going to do on Friday, but published for the listeners on Saturday. So that's the other thing about being part of the YouTube audience. You get these things as soon as they are coming out. You can watch them live, and we have YouTube-exclusive content as well. So you need to be subscribed. You need to hit like. You need to tell your friends. You need to get ready for an awesome quarterback preview right now on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome to the position previews. Yes, 'tis the season. My favorite episodes. We start with quarterback. We do tight end tomorrow. And next week, we'll tackle running backs and wide receivers. Adam Azer, Dave Richard, Jamie Eisberg, Heath Cummings. The whole gang is here to discuss the quarterback position. Got some awesome stats for you. Got some ADP breakdowns, sleepers, breakouts, busts, and, of course, strategy. How do you do it in a one quarterback league? How do you draft them in a two quarterback league or Superflex? Does anything change in PPR, half PPR, three receiver, all those great things? What's going on, guys? I'm going to introduce you all. And when I introduce you, just give me your basic read of the quarterback position this season. Heath Cummings, just lay it out for me in a sentence or two. 2022 quarterback position.
Draft Jalen Hurts in round 6. If someone takes him, draft Tom Brady in round 8.
Don't really think that was an overview of the quarterback position. I mean, that's
my quarterback strategy. That's what I was supposed to do, right?
I wanted like, well, it's deep this year, and but okay, fine. You know what? I'll blame myself. Not good enough instruction. Dave,
I thought it was pretty good advice.
I didn't say it was great advice. Sure. Dave, give me your overview of the quarterback position.
There are no good quarterbacks this year, and you should probably rush to take a quarterback in your draft. The opposite of what I just said is true.
That was a little confusing, but okay, Jamie, let's do it in the actual way to say it. Go ahead.
Quarterback is very deep. Wait on the position. I agree with Heath's strategy. If you the one thing I would add, if you can't get Hurts, Brady's fine. Please get Trey Lance. He's going to be awesome.
Is quarterback deeper than it was the previous 2 years?
It's always deep. But yes, probably is.
I'm answering yes.
It does. I don't think it looks any deeper than it did in the preseason the previous 2 years. I hope it's deeper than it has been the past 2 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I think this is really important. It really hasn't been that deep of a position. It's deep in the sense of if you're in a 12-team, one quarterback league, or obviously a 10-team, one quarterback league, you should have had no problem finding a reliable starting quarterback. But I remember doing position previews with you guys where you said there are 17, 18 quarterbacks. I'm fine with them as my number one on draft day. I can be the last person, that kind of thing. And that was not the case last year or the year before. In fact, last year, 11 of the top 12 quarterbacks were drafted as top 13 quarterbacks. So you basically had the guys who were drafted as starters were the best ones. They were the starters. It wasn't, QB 18 was really good or something like that. So I think, fellas, when you look at Trey Lance, who's going to move up into the, top 10 probably, but Lance, Fields, Lawrence, Tua, and there's guys like Jameis Winston. People are still high on Tannehill-ish. He's top 20 in ADP, but there's this group of younger, unproven players. We'll remove Winston from there. Lawrence, Tua, Lance, Fields, and then you've got hopefully an improved Carr and an improved Cousins. That's why I was wondering, is it deeper than it has been? Because I think you could maybe be excited about more guys this year than in years past. Recent years past.
It's deeper if Lance, Fields, Lawrence, two of those guys do what we think they can, and Rodgers doesn't fall off a cliff.
What you just said there was a little confusing because I didn't know if you said two of or two
Yes.
Okay. All right. We'll explore that topic a little bit more in just a little bit. I'm going to give you guys some cool stats, and you can react. We have not had a repeat QB1 in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues in almost 20 years. Peyton Manning in 2003 and 2004. That was the last time it happened in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. Oddly enough, that was also the last time it happened in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues, but it was a different quarterback. It was Dante Culpepper. So in 2003 and 2004, Peyton Manning and Culpepper were the top quarterbacks. Manning in 6-point, Culpepper in 4-point. We haven't had a guy repeat as QB1 since then, except for Josh Allen, who did it in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues last year, finished as QB1 in 2020 and in 2021. So that's a hard thing to do. Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers, by the way, came very close. They both had 3-year stretches where they were number 1, then number 2, then number 1. But it's tough to be number 1 2 years in a row. But this is also, I think, more interesting. In the last 4 seasons, we've had 8 quarterbacks finish top 2, right? Makes sense. 2 per year. 7 of those 8 that finished as QB1 or QB2 were drafted as QB9 or later. The only exception was Josh Allen last year, who was drafted as QB2 and finished as QB1. But usually the guys who are finished the last 4 years, 7 of the 8 guys who have finished as the number 1 or the number 2 quarterback have been drafted at the earliest QB9. Jamie, what does that mean to you?
Draft Trey Lance wherever you possibly can.
I knew it. I knew you were going to say
It's also
that.
Russell Wilson. I think Tom Brady is
Hurts isn't that far, right?
7, I believe.
Brady
Okay.
is 9 on Fantasy Pros.
Okay, that's another one who could do it quite easily. Just did it last year.
Like, almost expect him to do it.
Yeah,
Who? Hurts or
Brady.
Brady? You said
Brady.
Yeah. So pretty interesting stat there. And then, yeah, we can conclude with that. I want to tell you about fantasy football today on CBS Sports HQ. What's the programming for the rest of the week for today and tomorrow, Jamie? Noon Eastern, CBS Sports HQ. You can watch it on the CBS Sports app. You can watch it on Paramount Plus, or you can go to cbssportshq.com. What are we looking at?
We have a special guest joining us today. Austin Eckler, Chargers running back, will be on the show. So that's fun. And we're going to go over our running back rankings, give everybody our position preview there. And then we have an interview that we're running, at least a clip of, Pete Prisco and Rick Spielman, who's part of our group of CBS reporters, now former Vikings GM, at Colts camp, talking to Jonathan Taylor. So it ties into our running back position preview. So we'll have an interview from Jonathan Taylor from our guys that were there, and then we'll be speaking to Austin Eckler on the show.
Very cool. Check it out. Fantasy football today, noon Eastern, Monday through Friday, from now until the end of the season. We do have some big news. The NFL is appealing Deshaun Watson's 6-game suspension. Probably wish they had wrapped that up before the quarterback preview, but we'll obviously talk about
He's
Deshaun
not
Watson.
playing.
Bold.
You don't think so?
No, I think. Everything you're hearing, indefinite suspension with at least a year. I pulled him from my rankings. He's not in my rankings anymore.
I
Is
did
this
too.
the second or the third time you've pulled him from your rankings this year?
The second.
That's the thing.
But that's when you say everything you're hearing, that's what the NFL wants, right?
Right.
That's
Well, so the way I understand it is, if they suspend him for, let's just say it's a year, he can sue, and it could get potentially pushed back till next season, which would probably be a huge mistake on his part, because if the suspension still gets upheld from Goodell, he goes from losing about $1 million to losing $45 million if he does
after
not play
suing,
next
you're
year.
saying? Oh, if he doesn't play next year.
Yes.
Because of the base salary thing?
Yeah.
Right.
I think Jamie's 100% right on that. The only thing is, and I want to be careful how I speak because I'm not sometimes, but his camp seems completely untethered from reality.
Totally.
Like
They always have been.
So, which makes me think they might think that they are going to win a lawsuit, and so they might push it into next year because we continue to hear that he doesn't think he did anything wrong, and everybody seems to know that's not true. So I don't know that he won't play at all this year, but I prefer to just pull him from my rankings too.
There's uncertainty, and especially at a quarterback position that we've already talked about and we've already addressed as being deep. Why would you even bother dealing with that type of uncertainty? We'll talk about other quarterbacks that might have an injury that they're dealing with, and there's a little bit of uncertainty there, but there's a lot of uncertainty. This guy might not play at all this year, but isn't there a chance that if it goes to court before the season starts, that a judge can rule a stay in favor of Deshaun Watson, and then he's playing in week 1? There are a lot of different scenarios that can come out of this. I think the most likely one is that he does get suspended for longer than 6 games. If he were suspended let's call it a dozen games, I don't think anybody would draft him anyway, unless you had deep bench spots or were in a 2 QB Superflex league.
I just want to add one more, and it's still conjecture, but I think they did not appeal the 6-game suspension.
No, and they
So
asked the NFL not
if
to
he
either.
sued, he could possibly play week 7 if it was still going on, because he's not appealing the first 6.
Don't know how a judge would view that. There's so much that we just do not know about this.
Yeah.
And it's the serious uncertainty that keeps him from getting picked in 1 QB leagues.
Well, I mean, but we do know what the CBA says, and the CBA says that this is now in Goodell's hands.
Yep.
And so if he decides that it's a year or indefinite, and they negotiate it down to a year, I can't imagine that it's going to stay with it. I mean, after all the public backlash that has happened since the 6-game suspension, I cannot imagine that it's going to be less than a year.
Yeah. On the other hand, this is not what I want to see happen or anything like that. But on the other hand, you do set up this collectively bargained process with an unbiased, impartial, judge,
right.
and she hands down a ruling. And the first time this system is tested, you overrule it. That's another.
But that's
way
the
to look
overruling
at it.
part of the system.
Right.
Right.
Her
And
ruling is a
what's-
recommendation, not a ruling.
Yeah, what's the point of having that system?
Well,
And
I
again,
think
it's not what I'm saying, but that's the other side of it. But obviously, public sentiment is not going to care about that as much as they're going to care about. They want to see Deshaun Watson punished for this.
I think you also have what her ruling was that she was not going to be the first person to not overturn, but give a harsher penalty than what the previous penalties have been.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
She kind of threw it back in the NFL's face.
Goodell cannot overrule her findings on the facts.
Right.
Just the suspension. So it's not like they're overruling the one thing that they gave her complete autonomy.
And her facts found that
Right.
essentially he's, I don't want to say guilty, but clearly did something.
Her facts were only
nefarious activities.
Yes.
her facts were only dealing with 4 women. That was the NFL's.
Well,
case.
the 4 in what, from what I understand, the four of the more graphic cases.
Fair enough, but if you're sitting out there and you're going, "Hey, this 20 women in this," it was, but for what the NFL, what she ruled on, I'm sorry, Sue Robinson, is that her name?
Yes.
What
Yes.
she ruled on was the NFL presenting a case about 4 women, so they do have to stick to the 4 women and the facts that have already been laid out. We'll see what happens. We'll keep.
He needs to be punished further. Hopefully, it's a year.
The rest of your news and notes: Marquise Brown was arrested for criminal speeding. More than 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. We don't know much more. And more relevant to today's show, Matthew Stafford still being held back because of his elbow. He had a quote-unquote minor offseason procedure, and he's not 100% yet. I seem to remember this being an issue with Dak Prescott going into maybe last year.
Last year, they shut him down. It was a big story on Hard Knocks.
Because of his arm?
Yes.
Yes, he had arm fatigue.
Okay. Yeah, this is different, but again, we have a lot of time before the September 8th season opener for them. But still, I mean, this is important here. So
I don't.
Give me, Dave, give me your quick thoughts here, because obviously we'll talk about Stafford in the context of this episode.
I don't think anybody's worried about him missing games to start the year. I would be worried about how is he going to be at 100%? Is he going to be as effective as he was last year, all year? That's where my mind's at. And could it get so bad? He's in pain when he throws. Could it get so bad that he has to miss time? Getting Cooper Kupp on your fantasy team is great, but it's not as great if it's John Wolford throwing at him. Same with Allen Robinson.
All right. And Matthew Stafford was a guy who had some huge games. He had 7 regular season games with 28 or more fantasy points. He had 5 regular season games with 30 or more fantasy points and 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. So he was winning you some weeks. All right, let's get into some quarterback questions. How many quarterbacks are you comfortable with as your starter in a 1-quarterback league?
16.
16.
Sure.
Who do the Saints play in week 1? Let me double check, because to me this is part of it. I'm not thinking about it.
Jameis was my 16th.
Yeah, he's not for me, but he's close to it. I would say 17.
Okay, so
To begin the season, 17 different quarterbacks.
the general area, who's in that group toward the bottom?
I won't fight you on Jameis. He's 17 for me, but I cut it off at Fields at 16.
Yeah, I did not include Fields and Lance for week 1. So I cut it off at Jameis.
You should. You got to include Lance in the week 1 because he's got the Niner, or he's got the Bears, and he's got Seattle after that in week 2. It's part of the allure of going after Fields early or Lance early. Mm-hmm. One day I will get everybody's name right on this show.
Yeah. Is it good for Trey Lance if they're playing bad teams?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
They're not going to. I don't think they're going to keep him in the turtle shell. Right.
And so even if the answer was just something like 14, that's Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins territory. Jamie has Rodgers 15th. Dave has him 11th.
Stafford will be 15.
Okay. Heath has Rodgers 15, Stafford 12 currently. So anyways, Stafford could be quarterback 15 as of right now. And then that group though of 16 or 17 did not include Trevor Lawrence and did not include Tua Tagovailoa, right?
Right, but those are still 2 good quarterbacks to stash if you have the desire to stash quarterbacks and if you have the space on your bench to stash quarterbacks. And obviously, we're talking 1 quarterback leagues. 2 quarterback leagues, you're not stashing them, you're starting them.
How many of that group do you think requires a backup quarterback on your roster? If you draft Josh Allen, if you draft Lamar Jackson, you probably don't care about getting a backup. But if you draft Trey Lance, maybe you do. Heath, how many quarterbacks in that group of 16 or so would you say you should draft a backup just in case?
I would say 4, unless you include Lance and Fields, and then I would say 6.
Oh, I would say 4 if you include Lance and Fields.
I would like to have a backup if I have Stafford. I would like to have a backup if I have Rodgers. I would like to have a backup if I have Carr or Winston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Not anybody feel that way about Jalen Hurts?
Not anymore.
Yesterday you were saying he might get benched.
He might get benched, but it's going to be a while before he gets benched, if he gets benched. Minshew's been having a terrible camp too, apparently. So don't know how soon Hurts is going to be.
It was a very fun moment on FFT yesterday, Adam, on HQ, when the Minshew guy was defending the starter ahead of Minshew because Dave said that Hurts might get benched.
Has there been more?
We were talking about a player prop for him, and it was one of my reasons for taking a season-long under on Jalen Hurts. It's not a reason to not take Jalen Hurts.
Don't acknowledge that as if it's okay, Adam. Don't shake your head like that. There's 90% of our audience is just listening, doesn't know you just did that.
No, for a season-long player prop, I think he's got one of the best backups in football, and he's, he could of the top 15 quarterbacks. I would like to. Hurts is probably the most likely to get benched, right?
Listen to these sides.
Right?
What's that?
Of the top 15 quarterbacks, before you get to Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts is probably the most likely to get benched.
How bad would he have to be though to get benched? I mean, like, you're putting the team record on him or his play?
Both.
No. If his play stinks and they're 4-2, he's not going anywhere.
And their schedule is not very. They get to play the NFC East. They just went to the playoffs last year in his second year as a quarterback in the NFL.
I don't think he's going to get benched.
He just got A.J. Brown. Why are we even discussing this?
Yeah, look, they open against the Lions, then the Vikings, then Washington, then Jacksonville, then Arizona. If that is a great first 5 games for any quarterback, I would be surprised if Jalen Hurts is benched by October. He would have to absolutely suck.
We're wasting our breath.
I agree. And that's why I'm not taking a backup with Jalen Hurts.
Okay, good. Nobody is. What is your overall quarterback strategy, Jamie Eisenberg?
I mean, I say it for the last 15 years. Wait as long as you possibly can because the position is deep. It's not a bad idea if you get to a point in your draft where you don't love the other talent, the position, to take a peek at the quarterback spot, and if there's somebody you think that has upside and that you're not settling for, and we can debate the merits of who those guys are in the top 10, but if you feel like there's somebody with upside, then you can go and draft that quarterback. But for me, for the most part, I'm usually one of the last 3 managers, if not the last one, to take a quarterback, which means I'm banking on a lot of Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr this year because those are the 2 I usually end up getting.
Dave?
I don't want to purposely wait on a quarterback. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I want to get a really good value, and I want to include the potential of getting one of the stud quarterbacks, Allen, Mahomes, those types of guys, if they fall. Herbert, obviously I like Herbert better than Mahomes. Lamar Jackson, if they fall to a point in rounds 4 through 6, which they won't do in most public leagues, but if they were to, I'm jumping on that. I want to have a piece of that. I think that they're going to be worth that type of a value. One of the overarching storylines I have a concern about this season is that there's going to be a kind of like a flat scoring at receiver and running back. You're going to have studs, it goes without saying, but I think there's going to be a lot of players that are going to be right around 13 PPR points per week. And I think they're going to be inconsistent. I want to have consistency in my lineup, and I want a lot of points in my lineup. So if I can get one of those stud quarterbacks without having to reach for them, I'm going to take them. And I also, Jamie mentioned this, when you get to a point in a draft where you don't like any of the running backs, receivers, or tight ends that are there, and you just pivot to quarterback, you're usually going to find someone there that you'd happy to have on your team. So those are the two tenets of quarterback drafting that I've got this year.
And Heath.
I'm going to draft Jalen Hurts in round 6, and if he's not there, I'm going to draft Tom Brady in round 8, and if he's not there, I'm going to get one of Lance or Fields and combine them with one of the boring veterans.
Carr, Cousins, Stafford, Rodgers, that group?
Yeah, probably not Rodgers.
Okay, that's a pretty succinct strategy. So this question is a little repetitive, I guess. So if it's the same answer, that's fine. Just go ahead and give it. Which tier do you usually find yourself drafting your quarterback in, Heath?
I'm going to draft Jalen Hurts in round 6, and if he's not there, I'll take Tom.
Okay, fair enough.
Like,
Dave,
I think I should make a point of clarification, because if people watch our mock drafts, this isn't necessarily what I do. I'm giving advice based on like Fantasy Pros ADP or other ADP than our mock drafts. A lot of times I draft Mahomes or Herbert because they're there in round 5 or 6.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen for 95% of the people who are listening.
Mahomes' ADP is already pretty high. So is Josh Allen's, obviously. So I agree, Heath. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. In case you're curious about ADP, Josh Allen on Fantasy Pros right now is 24th overall, very end of round 2 in a 12-team league. Patrick Mahomes is in round 3, and Justin Herbert is early in round 4. So that would be an interesting decision for you guys. If Justin Herbert were there in round 4 and you're choosing between him and...
Nobody even takes a quarterback in. Josh Allen doesn't go until round 4 in our draft.
Yeah, okay, but
I've seen Josh Allen go round 3 in a couple of ours.
If you
Chris
were
likes to take quarterback early.
If you were drafting with the public, okay, and Justin Herbert were there in round 4, and you were deciding between him and, I don't know, Allen Robinson or something like that, or Mike Williams, maybe Breece Hall, yeah, what would you do?
Hall or Robinson?
Yep. You wouldn't take Herbert.
No.
Dave, did you say which tier you usually draft in? No, we didn't get to that.
No, I didn't. I'm one of those people that ends up getting Herbert in round 5 in our drafts. I'm taking Brady where Heath is taking Jalen Hurts, and I'm taking Jalen Hurts where Heath is taking Tom Brady. Maybe not that far, but I've got Brady ahead of him. I've drafted a lot of Tom Brady. Happy to have him round 6+.
Okay. We're going to get back to some general quarterback questions, and then we'll talk about sleepers, breakouts, busts, and we'll go through ADP and talk about every relevant quarterback, including the guys in the 2 QB leagues, the Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Ryan Tannehills of the world. But first, I am very excited to have SeatGeek as a sponsor for fantasy football today. This is true. I was just on SeatGeek a couple of days ago looking up prices for a football game. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can look along with me. You can see this is what I'm looking at. Florida State at Miami. Honestly, this is no joke. Anytime I want to go to an event, sports, concerts, whatever, the first place I go is SeatGeek. I've been using it for whenever they started becoming a sponsor for us, like 5 years ago, if not more. And they're just great. You can sort by best price. You can sort by the best deal. That's what you're looking at here, the best deal, because SeatGeek rates every seat. Or you can also include the fees or don't include the fees. You can have SeatGeek notify you when the prices get lower. And if you want to save $20 on your first SeatGeek order, use our promo code FFT. So that's a terrific deal for you. Promo code's FFT. The highest rated ticket app, concerts, baseball, basketball, football, festivals, anything else, SeatGeek puts tickets from all over the web in one place to make buying simple. They rate every ticket from 0 to 10 to make sure you're getting a good deal. And then if you look at the map, you'll see green dots, red dots, the big dark green ones are the best values. Those are the ones you want to click on. It is a really simple app to use, and it is the first and only place that I go to when I need tickets. The promo code is FFT. So you can get $20 off your first purchase with the promo code FFT at SeatGeek.com or on the SeatGeek app. That is promo code FFT for $20 off your SeatGeek order, your first SeatGeek order. SeatGeek, get your seat in a seat and download the app today. All right, back to some quarterback questions here. Let's talk about our strategy in different leagues. Let's start with 4-point versus 6-point. Dave, you just said you're taking Brady over Jalen Hurts, but I'm sure you were talking about 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. From what I've gathered, the majority, pretty significant majority of our listeners are in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues, but we know 4-point is very popular as well. So, Dave, would you take Hurts over Brady in a 4-point league?
No, I would still go with Brady. And I know that sounds crazy because Hurts is going to run for a bunch of touchdowns, but I think Brady catches him still in a 4-point league.
Okay. How about just general strategy, Jamie, in a 4-point per passing touchdown league? What does it change for you? I know it changes the order, the rankings a little bit, but does it change the way you prioritize quarterback? Do you care about it less?
Yes, absolutely care about it less. Certainly prioritize the running quarterbacks. They have such an edge. Brady can certainly be in the mix. Obviously, Allen, Mahomes, without their rushing touchdowns for Allen, at least, they're still going to be up there. Herbert as well. But clearly the guys that run get such a significant advantage, So Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, don't forget about Justin Fields. Like I told you, when I Azer statted it, his last 6 healthy games, over 50 yards rushing per game in that time frame. Those guys are going to, make up the difference of what, the other quarterbacks will do from a throwing perspective because of how much more that rushing production matters. But I think also one thing that we never really bring up a lot is what the penalty is for interceptions in 4-point versus 6-point. If it's still -2, then clearly the passing numbers aren't as prominent, So you see a lot of 4-point for passing touchdown leagues. They do -1, to sort of offset a little bit what that is. But if it's 4 points for touchdowns and -2 for interceptions, again, the passing touchdowns don't matter as much.
Yeah, Justin Fields, you want to do an Azer stat.
But that's just an Azer stat.
In his last 6 games that Jamie mentioned, removing the Baltimore game that he left with an injury, he was on pace for 958 rushing yards. I don't think that you should expect that because he averaged 7 yards per carry, which is more than Lamar Jackson has ever averaged in a season. Lamar Jackson's career high is 6.9. But you are getting a very prolific rusher in Justin Fields. It took him a while before we saw that, which isn't really that uncommon for mobile quarterbacks, I guess. Like Kyler Murray took a little while, but in his rookie year. But yeah, Fields can really, really run it.
For reference, the difference between Trey Lance and Tom Brady is, I think, 80 points in my projections in 6-point and 40 in 2-point.
Yeah, but still Brady.
Makes sense.
In 4-point. You said
yes.
2.
Oh, yeah. Still Brady over Lance.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's a big difference.
Heath, does scoring matter? Half PPR, full PPR, or does 2 wide receiver versus 3 wide receiver? Does any of that affect your quarterback strategies?
I draft quarterbacks a little bit higher in non-PPR than I do in full PPR. Honestly, it's not a joke. Because there's a bigger difference between the elite running backs and wide receivers in PPR than there is in non.
How about 10 team versus 14 team? 10 versus 12 versus 14. They have shallow and deep leagues.
I'm more inclined to take a superstar quarterback in a 10-team league. Not necessarily earlier, but I think their value gets pushed up. Not even like a round, maybe not even half a round. I'm just more interested in trying to get them because I think there is a difference between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, or between Justin Herbert and Kirk Cousins. I think there's a difference that fantasy managers can appreciate with those types of guys. And in a smaller league, those are the edges that you can have over your competition. In a 14-team league, I'm basically going to have the same strategy that I would in a 12-team league, which I talked about earlier on the show. I think there are enough quarterbacks at the position you can say, yeah, there's 14 good enough starters. I'm looking for a good value. And if I don't find a good value, I just wait till late.
Jamie, as someone who takes Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins a lot, would you also employ that strategy in a 10-team league, or would you be more likely to try to get an elite guy?
I think the only way you're settling for those guys, and I say settling just because of where they typically get drafted, but is if somebody takes 2 before you take 1, because no one is approaching it based on ADP, based on any rank list you're going to most likely look at and see Cousins or Carr in the top 10. If somebody has it ranked that way, kudos to them. But for the most part, I would certainly much rather take, which I have it ranked as it is now, a shot on Trey Lance and then backfill with one of these guys in a 10-team league. But yeah, I think Dave's approach is right. In a shallower format, you want to have as many, difference makers as you can. And it's easier to sort of find backup options that you like for your, or reserve options that you like for your bench in a shallower league, later in the draft. So yeah, I'll dive in the quarterback pool a little bit earlier in those formats.
Okay. And by the way, here's some more stats for you, because we're talking a lot about Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Trey Lance. I just told you that Justin Fields in his last 6 healthy games was on pace for about 950 rushing yards, but you shouldn't expect it because the 7 yards per carry. Trey Lance, he was only a quarterback for 10 quarters last year, 2 starts and half of another game. But in those 10 quarters, he was on pace for just under 1,100 rushing yards. Okay. He's incredible. I think he had 1,100 rushing yards in his one college season in like 13 games. I don't remember what it was, but he's an even more gifted rusher than Fields, I would say anyway. Meanwhile, Derek Carr has been 9th, 5th, and 6th in yards per attempt last 3 seasons. And he was 5th in the NFL in passing yards. He's been really good in yards per attempt and overall yards last year anyway. But his touchdown rate's been really low. Last 3 years, he's been 21st, 14th, and 23rd in touchdown rate. Well, now he's getting Mr. Double-digit touchdown. Devontae Adams caught 10 or more touchdowns in 5 of his last 6 seasons. Kirk Cousins, if you look at when Adam Thielen has been healthy, I mean, he's basically he's been like a top 5 quarterback. I'll try to get the all right. So since the Jefferson breakout and with a healthy Thielen, this is a big Azer stat. He's averaged 25.2 fantasy points per game and 6 point per passing touchdown leagues, which would have made him QB6 last year. Basically, Jefferson broke out midway through his rookie year. And when Jefferson's been at his best and Thielen's been on the field, Cousins has been awesome. I'll just sum it up that way. So I love quarterback this year. And every time I draft a lot of Russell Wilson and I love it. I'm fine with that. Round 7, 8, whatever. But there's always, maybe I should have just waited on Cousins or something like that. But Carr and Cousins are back-to-back in ADP, not just at quarterback. I think they're separated by 1 or 2 picks right now in overall ADP. So people see them very similarly. They're going about 105th overall. And they've got a lot to offer. But they are, I think people are trying to weigh great situations versus these guys have had good careers, but they're not amazing quarterbacks and they don't run that much, right? So see how it plays out. All right, let's do sleepers break. Oh, Superflex 2QB. Now this is a separate episode, basically. We will definitely spend, half of an episode or something like that on this format. But
we just did the mock draft Tuesday night. If somebody wants to go back and watch,
we did. You can see it on YouTube. You can see the article on cbssports.com/fantasy. We did a Tuesday night mock draft. At the time, we thought Deshaun Watson was only suspended 6 games. So Schneier took Watson and Cooper, in fact. But Heath, give me a quick overview on how you approach Superflex leagues.
You should draft quarterbacks earlier.
Oh yeah,
probably like 9 of them in the first round, or 8 of them in the first round, and 12 of them in the first 2 rounds. And I'm a little bit more worried about Lance and Fields. And I bump up in terms of the way down low, the guys who I don't think could lose their job, like Jared Goff, Davis Mills. The guys, there's more value in a mediocre quarterback who is likely to play 17 games in that type of format.
Dave, I'll let you get in on this because, just to bring up my team from that Tuesday draft, I waited until round 3 to draft a quarterback, which was unusual. I may have been the last person. No, Marone, who had the 12th pick, waited also until round 3, but 6 picks after me. I was the second to last person, I think, to draft a quarterback. I took Jonathan Taylor, Travis Kelce, Matthew Stafford, and Trevor Lawrence. And I thought that worked out very well. I might have been a little lucky to have gotten Stafford there. Well, We'll see about the elbow. But, I don't usually approach it that way, but it did work out for me. But what do you think about the idea of not taking a quarterback until round 3? 12-team league, by the way.
Yeah, usually I would say that quarterbacks will get gobbled up sooner. I thought you were lucky. Let's assume Stafford's fine. I thought you were lucky to get Stafford there, and I thought Marone was lucky to get Cousins where he got Cousins. I expected more quarterbacks to fly off the board in the first 2.5 rounds than actually did. So when that works out for you, obviously it's a win. That's a win for your team if you get Stafford as your first quarterback in round 3 in a Superflex or a 2 QB league. Yeah. I try and cover that position pretty quickly in a Superflex or 2 QB. And for the most part, a Superflex league is a 2 QB league. You'd be silly to not take advantage of the Superflex outside of your quarterback's bye weeks if you wanted to. So I'm always trying to get that position filled up pretty quickly. I think I had Brady and Rodgers as 2 of my first 3 picks in that draft. And Brady was a late first round pick for my team in that draft. So I'm chasing that position early on.
Okay. And things change, obviously, in a 10-team league. If you have the 4th pick in a 10-team league, you're going to have much better options for you in the 3rd round. But this was a 12-team mock draft, and you can check it out. Let's do sleepers, breakouts, and busts. Then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back. We'll look at ADP. We'll talk about all of these guys. Here we go. My favorite sleeper quarterback is blank. We'll go Jamie, Dave, Heath. Sleeper.
Justin Fields. Just looking again at those 6 games and the rushing production and how cheap he is. Anytime you have a quarterback that has the potential to run for, let's just take off the numbers off the top a little bit based on what his average would have been. 600 yards, 700 yards. I think that's within the realm of possibility if they let him do what he did at the end of last season. Again, different coaching staff. You don't love the receiving core because they really didn't help him a lot this offseason, but I think it's good enough. And I'm guessing just based on how this roster is constructed, they're going to be chasing a lot of points. So we could see, just a lot of volume in terms of pass attempts. So I think Fields will be in the conversation as a back end, number 1 QB, certainly a back end top 12 option.
I have 3 great sleepers. The one that I'll go with is the one that I have the rank the highest, and that's Jameis Winston. Winston's healthy. He's got a good receiving core. Michael Thomas is back. Olave was drafted. Jarvis Landry is there. Alvin Kamara catches passes out of the backfield. We can worry a little bit about Taysom Hill taking work away. He'll probably steal a few touchdowns from Jameis over the course of the season. And last year, Jameis did not throw a ton early on, but I can't help but think that he will throw more this year. I'm not sure how much work Kamara will get as a running back, how good he'll be with it. I think he'll be pretty good. I think he's going to do more as a pass catcher. And I think Winston's going to look for him. And I think Winston's got a shot at having a pretty good season. And you can draft him with your last pick.
Do we, and I don't believe this, but I'm just asking the question. Do we think that he has a chance to get benched if he struggles?
No, he can get benched.
Jameis?
Yes.
I mean, Andy Dalton's there. And, it's not like I'm trying to remember what his contract was.
I think it was.
It's a much bigger contract than last year, but yeah, there's no question if they come out of the gate and he's
2 years, $28 million. So
right, it's way more than what he had last year, but I don't think that matters so much.
Like if old Jameis resurfaces, because last year he was so efficient and was on pace for just an excellent season. And granted, look, I think he learned sitting behind Drew Brees. LASIK, I'm sure, has helped him. Just being in the opportunity that he has now. But I just wonder if there's a slump and the team is struggling a little bit, because we know the defense should be good. They should still be able to run the ball very well. If he gets turnover prone, do they go? I don't think it'll be Taysom, but I wouldn't be surprised if Andy Dalton maybe starts a few games that we don't expect.
One thing that Winston did last year that made him more efficient, less turnover prone, was he threw the ball much shorter. He was not the gunslinger of old. He got breezified basically, and he's in that Saints offense.
Or he lost Arians. One of the
yeah, right. But he played just, it was a safer profile, and that's the way they run their offense basically. All right, Dave, just real quick, just give me the names for the other 2 sleepers.
Well, I don't want to take them away from Heath. They might be
All
Heath
right.
sleepers.
Heath,
so let Heath answer first.
My favorite sleeper was Justin Fields. My second favorite sleeper was Jameis Winston. So don't worry about that, Dave. I'm going to go off the board. And this will not be popular, but somebody once called this guy an elite quarterback. And I believe he's finished as a top 14 quarterback every year that he's played at least 14 games. He was a high-end number 2 quarterback last year. Now he has better weapons, and he's going to get to throw the ball a lot more. Carson Wentz is a sleeper, especially with as good as Jahan Dotson has looked. He might have 2 very good wide receivers and an offense that's thrown the ball about 600 times over the past 2 or 3 years.
All right, Carson Wentz. Justin Fields, Jameis Winston, Carson Wentz. Okay, Dave, who else?
The thing that Wentz may have in common with the other 2 sleepers I'll give, it's Tua Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence. Good receiving core, opportunity to throw a lot, questions about the run game. In Miami, yes, we think Miami will run the ball effectively when they do run, but it's Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, and Sony Michel. It's not exactly a trio of dominant running backs. Jacksonville's got James Robinson. We don't know how ready he is or how effective he'll be when he does get the chance. And ETN's there too, but he's better as a pass catcher. Put him out in space, throw him the ball. Okay. And in Washington with Wentz, Antonio Gibson, huge question marks about him. We think that Brian Robinson might have a role. We know that J.D. McKissick will have a role. That's in the passing game. All of those quarterbacks could be in a position to throw a lot this year. It makes them all interesting.
Because I think maybe somebody might have Tua or Lawrence as a breakout. It really doesn't matter how you define them. But let's go to Dave, Heath, Jamie for breakouts.
I mean, I think the easy breakout at quarterback is Trey Lance. Just the fact that he showed enough last year. He's guaranteed himself the job this year. The only way he's getting benched this year is if Jimmy Garoppolo somehow stays with the 49ers. There are 49ers fans who think that Garoppolo should stay with the team. If Garoppolo's there, that worries me a little bit, because if Lance does get off to a slow start, they could make a move back to Garoppolo. But if he doesn't get off to a slow start and he does well, you're talking about one of those quarterbacks that can get you tons of stats rushing and tons of stats passing. There's been a lot of buzz about how he's connected with Brandon Ayuk. One of the silver linings of Debo's hold in was that he was connecting with Ayuk every day in practice. And Ayuk seems to be rejuvenated. That's a good wide receiver to keep in mind when you hit the middle of your draft. And if he brings that into the season, and you know that Debo's going to do a lot of good things, absolutely Trey Lance is the breakout quarterback of the year.
Heath.
I want to thank Dave for not choosing Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is my number 5 quarterback, number 2 in 4 points per passing touchdown. He's already shown us elite ability rushing the ball. He just got an elite number 1 wide receiver. We've seen this I guess it was both of them 2 years ago. With both Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. Hurts his first 2 years in the league, just as good a passer as those guys. No reason he can't make a leap as a passer. And if he does, he could be the number 1 quarterback in fantasy.
Jamie, breakout.
There's a lot of options left.
Just say Justin Fields again.
I guess. I mean, those are the 2, I think, ones that you just look at. He's not a breakout candidate, but I think he can get into the conversation as the number 1 quarterback for not being there recently, and that's Russell Wilson. Just with his change of scenery, and sucks that he doesn't have Tim Patrick, but just I think based on how the offense will operate in his favor, allowing him to be the catalyst and allowing him to have a career high in pass attempts, that's a very encouraging thing. So, just from where he's getting drafted and where the upside I think falls, I think Russell Wilson's in line to have a re-breakout season.
All right.
How about one more?
Sleeper. Go ahead.
One more breakout. Guy who could have a career year, Derek Carr.
Well, where are you guys on Carr versus Cousins?
Back to back, I like Cousins slightly better.
Yeah.
I like Cousins significantly better.
Okay. So the sleepers, Jamie said Fields. Dave said Jameis Winston plus Tua and Lawrence. And he said Carson Wentz. When you hear that, that doesn't mean Heath likes Carson Wentz better than Justin Fields or anything. Just different names to give. Breakout quarterback, Jamie said Wilson, who he already Trey Lance and Jalen Hurts were off the board. So we gave you Lance and Hurts and Russell Wilson. Okay, how about a bust? We'll go Heath, Jamie, Dave. Go ahead, Heath. Who's a bust this year?
Well, I hate to say it, but it's Joe Burrow. He is now QB6 on Fantasy Pros, but ahead of Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, 32 picks ahead of Tom Brady, which is kind of his best case scenario is Tom Brady, and ahead of Russell Wilson. I I don't think that I understand why it happened. He had a phenomenal run. He's an exceptional quarterback. He has great weapons. But I really don't think there's any reason to draft him before Tom Brady, and certainly not 30 picks before.
Yeah, the funny thing is with Burrow is he had a phenomenal run leading them to the Super Bowl, but in his last 12 games, including the playoffs, he scored more than 19 fantasy points 5 times in 12 games. And that was in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. So it really wasn't even that great. Like there were some positive signs, obviously, but it's funny. I mean, people are doing it not based on production, except for those 2 huge games in weeks 16 and 17.
Mm-hmm. He was like 20 fantasy points a week without those games.
Yeah, which isn't top 12. Top 12, you're looking at 22 points per game the last couple of years. Well, 2020 was a wild quarterback year, but in recent years, 22 points per game is probably where you're looking at for QB 12 in 6-point leagues, and it's more like 18.5 per game for QB 12 in 4-point leagues. So Joe Burrow is Heath's big bust based on it's all based on ADP. And Jamie, how about you?
Same, based on ADP, Aaron Rodgers. He lost a pretty big piece of his offense, if you haven't heard. So no more Devontae Adams. By the way, if you want a good laugh, go check out Devontae Adams, Derek Carr, and Hunter Renfrow squeezing into an Uber. Look, Rodgers, I think, will still be good. He just won't be top 10 good, and he's still being drafted as a top 10 quarterback, which, again, comparing him to some of the guys going after him, I personally like Cousins and Carr better. I certainly like Trey Lance better. I just don't think Rodgers has the same ceiling. And I've said this a couple of times the last few years, and I've been burned by it. So for those of you buying Rodgers, I hope I get burned by it again, because I'd like to see him still have another good season. But I just don't see it without Devontae Adams getting him to that level once again.
Yeah. In terms of ADP, I just want to say we talked about this the other day. If you go to Fantasy Pros, which is what we're using right now, eventually we'll be using CBS Sports, and you just click on their quarterback ADP, Aaron Rodgers is 10th. But if you click on their overall ADP and go to PPR, and that's probably the difference. It's probably a scoring thing. Go to PPR, he's 11th. Not a big deal.
I think I understand what that difference is, because I was trying to understand it. I think they average the different sites for each ranking. And so being way down on one site would not move you as much within one of those as it would the other. But
well, I think their quarterback ADP is all of their scoring, and their overall is their PPR scoring.
Could be.
Okay. Yeah. Well, no. Overall, you can sort by whatever you want. So
no. But I think for the quarterbacks, though, it's a combination of everything.
Okay. It doesn't matter. Look, if he's 10th, if he's 11th, it doesn't matter. Aaron Rodgers is the answer for Jamie for biggest bust. Dave, how about you?
Cover your ears, Heath. Patrick Mahomes is going off the board as QB2. I think he might be QB4. I'm definitely taking Herbert ahead of Mahomes. Big question mark about how statistically great he'll be without Tyreek Hill. I think he'll still be good. I think he'll still be top 5 good. But I've started weighing the merits of Lamar Jackson, especially because the Ravens' run game doesn't look like it's at full strength anytime soon. And we saw what they did last year when their run game wasn't at full strength. They threw the ball a lot. And so if you're taking Lamar Jackson, who by all accounts at camp is throwing the ball well, if he takes a step forward as a passer and he's throwing more and he ends up being their best rusher as well, that might be the stuff that makes him QB1. So I'm keeping a real close eye on how J.K. Dobbins is doing, how the other running backs are doing. The Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator in Baltimore, just called the running back competition, quote, wide open. I don't know if he'd say that if J.K. Dobbins was doing his thing or if he was close to doing his thing. So I'm almost at the point now. I'm definitely taking Lamar over Mahomes in 4-point. Might be doing it in 6.2. I think Lamar could be in line for a monster year.
Did he say that in regards to the guys who are healthy, or in terms of the whole room?
He was just asked about the running backs in general, and he said that it's wide open. If you want me to find the exact quote, I'd happy.
Yeah, I just wonder if like he means the guys who are actually practicing right now,
right?
Or
okay, give me a second.
And I'm not questioning you. I'm just saying like
no. Let's get it right, because I'm sure a lot of people.
Well, I would be
like
questioning whoever said that if they were saying that J.K. Dobbins and Mike Davis are actually going to compete.
Well, I mean, you've gotten good reports on Justice Hill, which is like, okay, like is it Corey Clement, Mike Davis, and Justice Hill, and the competition's wide open, or is it everybody in the room is wide open?
He was asked, what do you make of the running back competition as it stands right now?
Yeah, he's got to be talking about
there
the
you
guys
go.
in the field.
Right. So he just said, I see it as wide open. I see everybody is capable. Everybody is flashing. I mentioned Corey Clement by name because he was new. We're trying to push them all to the number one spot. We're trying to push them all there. I don't know.
All right.
It doesn't sound like
mind,
it doesn't necessarily sound like he's if I'm not reading between the lines that this is bad for Dobbins, if that's what
Yeah, it must mean he's talking about what he sees as opposed to the entire group.
right. And well, yeah.
We're taking a break. When we come back, we'll get into ADP. We'll talk about all these guys, some of them briefly, some of them we'll expand on. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. Okay, let's take a look at Fantasy Pros, PPR, average draft position. I mean, look, does it really matter? Quarterback, PPR, non-PPR? It is different for whatever reason, but just the quirks of drafting. But here is the PPR ADP as of, what is today? August 4th?
4th.
As of August 4th, average draft position. Josh Allen, 24th overall. When is the earliest you guys would take Josh Allen or any quarterback for that matter?
I would take him first overall in a Superflex.
In a non-Superflex league, when would you take?
Late round 3 if it's 10 teams, early round 4 to middle round 4 in 12 plus teams.
Same.
Anybody? Okay.
Late round 3 and non-PPR. Round 4 and full.
And in round 4, which quarterbacks would you consider there if they were available?
Just him.
I think just Allen.
I've got Allen, Herbert, and Mahomes back to back in terms of picks. So all three of them.
So Allen is 24th. Mahomes is a little bit later into round 3, and Justin Herbert is early round 4. Lamar Jackson is QB4. Joe Burrow, I have him as QB5. He'd said QB6, whatever it is. Might just depend on what you're looking at, but he's 5 or 6. Joe Burrow, he's in round 5. Kyler Murray is next. He's in the end of round 5, the beginning of round 6, and he is QB6. So it's Allen, Mahomes, Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Burrow, Kyler Murray. Let's stop right there. We're through 5 rounds, basically 60 picks in PPR on Fantasy Pros, and it's Allen, Mahomes, Herbert, Jackson, Burrow, Kyler Murray. Other than Burrow being in this group, which we think is too high. Just real quick, where do you guys have Joe Burrow?
Lower.
QB 11, pick 107.
I'm right. I'm QB 10, 105.
Yeah,
So
he will be
round
QB
9.
11 for me. Same.
Okay. Is any other qualms here with the top 3 and then Jackson and Kyler?
I put Brady ahead of Kyler.
I would put Hurts ahead of Kyler.
I'd put Hurts and Brady ahead of Kyler.
Why is that? Kyler Murray is one of 3 quarterbacks who has been top 5 in fantasy points from yards alone in each of the last 2 seasons. So if you just took away all the touchdowns and just looked at yards,
Well,
the
the
3
touchdowns, especially passing touchdowns, has been one of the things that he has struggled with.
Mm-hmm.
not in my opinion. I mean, that depends.
Well, statistically.
Based
on, like, the
when he's
stats.
had DeAndre Hopkins on the field, he's been fine there.
He's
Before
not going to have DeAndre Hopkins for at least 6
for
games.
6 games, but he has Marquise Brown now. Before he got hurt in 2019, or 2020, he was the number 1 quarterback in fantasy. He didn't have any problems throwing touch. So yeah, when he's played hurt and when he hasn't played without DeAndre Hopkins, he's had touchdown issues. But the only 3 quarterbacks who have been top 5 in points from yards alone each of the last 2 years are Allen, Mahomes, and Kyler. And Murray is the only one who's been top 3 both seasons. And so, but if you're worried about his passing touchdowns, how could you possibly put Jalen Hurts ahead of him? Hurts has much bigger passing touchdown concerns than Kyler Murray.
I expect Jalen Hurts to run for probably 200 or 300 more yards.
It could be more than that, honestly. Kyler's in 2 of his 3 seasons, he's been kind of like a 550-yard rusher, and Hurts has 1,000-yard potential.
And you have to trade Murray before Call of Duty comes out.
All right. When you look at Allen, Mahomes, and Herbert, Mahomes is losing that. Dave already called him a bust as QB2. He's losing Tyreek Hill. He's got a pretty good history without Tyreek Hill. Most of it was in 2019. But I mean, I personally have not and probably will not have any Patrick Mahomes. I'm not going to take him as QB2. Anyone else feeling nervous about it other than Dave, who laid it out a little while ago?
We had this conversation yesterday on HQ in that while he does not have Tyreek Hill and will not have a direct Tyreek Hill replacement, this is the deepest receiving core that he's had from a talent standpoint. And so, as I brought up yesterday, so there's no 1-for-1, but there's certainly an upgrade over Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson. Right. And so does Juju and Sky Moore and MVS and whatever they get out of Hardman, who's still there, do those guys collectively do more than Tyreek Hill did and Demarcus Robinson did and Byron Pringle did? I'm sure most people would say no, and I would as well, but it may not be the case, and I think just knowing what he's capable of doing still, like I get Dave's point on, certainly him as a bust as the second quarterback. I have no problem with him as the third quarterback. If somebody wants Lamar Jackson, that's fine. He's got as much upside as anybody. So, but I think Mahomes will still be in the same range that he has been, and maybe, just maybe, he gets back to that 5,050 level because of other guys doing different things, and it's so hard to stop them. If these guys pick up the offense as quickly as they hopefully will, he's got an amazing offensive line, still a questionable run game, but guys that will make plays out of the backfield catching the ball, and he could, just missing the Super Bowl and how everything sort of unfolded last year. Plus, you're not good without Tyreek Hill. Motivated Andy Reid, motivated Patrick Mahomes, a pretty good player to have on your side.
Do you guys think that? Let me ask it differently. How many quarterbacks do you think have QB1 upside? I'll go through the list and you tell me, do you think they can realistically finish QB1? Josh Allen, yes.
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes,
Yes.
Yes.
Justin Herbert,
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Lamar Jackson,
Yes.
Yes.
Joe Burrow,
No.
No.
Nope.
Kyler Murray.
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay. Dak Prescott.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Jalen Hurts.
Yes.
No.
Russell Wilson.
Yes.
No.
Tom Brady.
Yes.
Yep.
Anyone else? Stafford, Lance, Carr, Rodgers, Cousins, Fields, etc.
Lance.
I'm going to say Lance and Fields just because there's enough unknowns about them as passers that if they go out and rush for 1,200 yards and are average as passers, it's the same argument I make for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah. QB1 is such a high threshold. It's almost, I think every quarterback that finishes QB1 has 40 touchdown scores combined, passing and rushing, for the last however many years. So I don't know that you need to think about that on draft day, but
you think about that before draft day when you make your own list of quarterback rankings. Yes, you do. You need to look at the quarterback list and say how many of these guys have a shot at 40 touchdowns. I bet that's exactly what we just did. If you would ask us the question, run down the list of quarterbacks again. How many of these guys can get to 40 touchdowns?
But here's the thing.
Our answers are going to be the same.
I know, but before we do that,
I don't think we should do that. I think we just did that.
You don't draft Trey Lance. If I told you, well, he pretty much has no chance of being QB1 because he's not going to score 40 touchdowns, but he could easily be QB3, right?
Sure,
right.
But that's not what you asked.
So it's a fun exercise, but I guess it doesn't really matter when you get to a guy like Trey Lance. If he finishes QB3, you're going to be thrilled.
What might be more interesting to do is run down the list of quarterbacks again and ask us who has a chance to finish top 5 at their position. And I mean, you're going to get a ton of yeses. And that's how you know the position is very exciting this year and plenty deep.
See, I can see Cousins and Carr getting 40 touchdowns.
You think so, really?
Yeah. I mean, if things work out, obviously at the most optimal level. But
you know what? I think you might be right on Cousins.
You have great receiving cores for both these guys.
Yeah, I don't know about Carr, but Cousins, I think.
Carr doesn't have a great receiving core?
I think he does. I don't think he's got it in him to get to 40 total touchdowns.
Yeah, and if you want to be a top 5 quarterback, most of the time you're talking about 30 touchdowns. That's per 16 games, so probably more like 32 or so. Yeah, 32, 33. Almost every quarterback. There's about a little bit less than one per year, and it's always a mobile guy that finishes top 5 with fewer than 30 touchdown passes. I can go through that in another show. Let's talk about more players here. So after those top 6, which is Allen, Mahomes, Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, and we think Burrow should be lower around QB 11. Dak Prescott is QB 7. Jalen Hurts is QB 8. They're both going in round 6. Dak and Hurts. Who do you guys like better, Dak or Hurts?
Hurts.
Russell Wilson in round 7. Matthew Stafford in round 8. Now, look, Stafford's ADP is going to change based on the elbow, I guess. But, the first 6 I gave you, here's the next 6. So let's just do that. Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Russell Wilson, Stafford, Brady, Rodgers. There's your top 12. After that, it's Lance, Carr, Cousins, Fields, and we'll get into that. But 7 through 12 is Prescott, Hurts, Wilson, Stafford, Brady, Rodgers. And they are going between round 6 and the end of round 8, basically. That is a 2-round stretch there of 24 picks or so of that group. Dak, Hurts, Wilson, Stafford, Brady, Rodgers. Heath, what stands out to you in that group?
I don't understand why Tom Brady's in this group.
You think he should be ahead?
Well, yeah, I mean, he has been ahead ever since he got to Tampa. And I guess people are worried that Godwin's not going to be okay for a large portion of the season. But, I think he's going to get to throw more passes than anybody else, and he's better than just about anybody else at doing that, and he has elite weapons. I don't think there should be any pocket passers drafted before Tom Brady.
Including Dak Prescott? Do you consider him a pocket passer?
No, I think he's going to win more again this year.
So who would you take, Brady or Dak?
Well, I would take Brady, so yes,
okay.
But I don't consider Dak a pocket passer.
Okay. I mean, look, before the Julio Jones signing and before we found out Godwin wasn't going to open on the PUP list, I was nervous about Brady because I just felt like it was tenuous, like Evans gets dinged up and who knew what Godwin was going to produce. Then they lost Ryan Jensen too, and they were already out without 2 guards, and they have a new coach who's probably going to be less aggressive. I'm not saying that they're going to be run heavy or anything, but I could see the case against Brady.
I don't think if the new coach wants to be the current coach that they're going to go run heavy.
No, they're definitely not going to go run heavy, but they may not lead the NFL in pass attempts, and they may not be throwing when they're up by 14 points in the fourth quarter. And that might lead to 5 fewer touchdowns or something like that and 150 fewer yards. I'm just throwing numbers out there. So I saw some reasons. I'm encouraged I think Julio can have a nice bounce back, help at least. And I'm encouraged by Godwin's progress. What else? Jamie, when you look at that group of 6, Prescott, Hurts, Wilson, I know you're going to favor Hurts for sure. Stafford, Brady, Rodgers. Anyone you're just not drafting? You said Rodgers was a bust earlier. So
Rodgers and Stafford in this group. These are 3 of my favorites, though, in this group of Hurts, Brady, and Wilson. So the spots that you get these guys in typically, it's this is the first spot for me that I tend to, okay, I like this group. I'm gonna take a peek at a quarterback right now.
Okay. And then you still find yourself waiting till the next group, which is fine, but this is good value for these players. I mean, you're talking about some guys who a lot of them have, top 5 upside for sure, top 3 upside, let's say. Dave, nervous about anyone in this group? Prescott, Hurts, Wilson, Stafford, Brady, Rodgers.
Not to the point where, Stafford right now, but if you had asked me that yesterday or a few days ago, I would have said, not really. No. Fine going to battle with any of these guys as my QB1.
What about the fact that Aaron Rodgers played 6 games without Davante Adams in 2019 and 2020, and he scored 22 or more points in 5 of 6 games? He scored 31 or more points in 4 of 6 games. So he has been unbelievable without Davante Adams.
Did you guys also hear that?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
What did I say?
Nothing at all. Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers.
No, what did I say?
No, there's nothing. You didn't say anything.
Oh, crap. Was it really bad?
No, it's fantastic.
I almost just cursed. Anyway, what about the fact that
almost.
Aaron Rodgers has been incredible without Davante Adams?
I think that's the one thing that keeps me ranking Aaron Rodgers as a top 12 quarterback. And he's a low end. He's not in my top 10. But he's an unbelievable quarterback. He's one of the best to ever do it. And I not having Davante Adams it's absolutely going to suck, but he can still find ways to churn out some fantasy points. Will he be as good as he was in years past? No. Should you get another quarterback to go with him? You could, because he could end up stinking. But he's healthy. I hope that offensive line is healthy. I think he's going to lean on the running backs quite a bit in the passing game, but I'm encouraged by what he's doing with Lazard. I'm encouraged by what I'm reading about Romeo Doubs. And I think that they will find a way to have the offense be 80% of what it was last year.
Okay, I said 5 or 6 games for the record. I don't know what you all heard. So I just got to speed up because I think, Heath, you have to go.
Well, pretty soon.
If anybody has to hop off, because I know you have to get ready for HQ. That's fine.
So we're not going to talk about Aaron Rodgers' recent podcast and how he's giving him credit for his late season resurgence to psychedelic experience in South America.
I'm sure Ricky Williams and Josh Gordon love hearing that.
Maybe if our podcast is slumping a little bit, I'll have to keep it in mind. The next group of 6 is Trey Lance, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Justin. Well, that's the big 3 there, right? Lance, Carr, Cousins are quarterbacks 13, 14, 15. And then after that, you've got Fields, Tua, and Lawrence.
I think you can lump Fields in with that first group of 3.
I think you should put Tua in there too, the way his training camp's going.
Yeah, there's upside for him. There really is.
Tua apparently has thrown 1 bad pass since minicamp, by the way.
Just ask Tyreek.
It's
exciting. I mean, all you see is the positive stuff ever since the overthrow.
Right. We got to get out there. We got to see him throw in person. There's no excuses.
Get out there, Dave.
I'm going. I'm going to be there for at least 2 days in late August.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you this about Tua. According to ESPN, since the Dolphins drafted Tua in 2020, Miami's wide receivers have ranked 29th, 4th lowest in the league in separation. Tyreek Hill was 13th best last year in separation. Jalen Waddle was 26th. So
he was running routes of like 10 yards.
Right. It's just going to be a different world for Tua. I mean, what kind of upside does Tua have? And what kind of upside does Lawrence have? Who has more?
I think Lawrence has more.
I think Tua has more.
Ooh.
I lean toward Lawrence because I think he'll run more.
I think they'll both run a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. If Lawrence runs more, then I would agree.
Lawrence ran for 700 yards in his last 3 years of college.
Yeah.
He didn't really do it a lot last year.
He had 73 attempts last year for, I think it was like 270 something.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's pretty good. It's better than I thought.
I think better offensive line.
He ran for 334 yards.
Oh, 334, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot more than Tua. That's a really good number, too.
And 2 touchdowns, right?
Yep.
So, was I right on the attempt? 73?
73 or 4, yeah.
I think that I think that matters a little bit. You know, they both got receiving upgrades. Obviously, Tua's are better. Both got offensive line upgrades. But I think, pedigree matters. And I think Lawrence will have a little bit of a better ceiling, a little bit higher ceiling. So I like both the guys the same. I think they're both very good number 2 quarterbacks to settle for. If you can't get, depending on how your draft goes, if you can't get somebody like Fields, who has, I think, a higher ceiling than both those guys, you want to put Jameis in that category as well. But, if you draft a Carr or Cousins and you want to say, okay, I wanted to see what else may be out there to help my team, then I think Tua and Lawrence certainly, are good guys to stash.
Who's got top 5 upside? Either of them?
I don't think so, but it wouldn't shock me if they got there.
Okay.
I'd say Lawrence.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Lawrence probably has a sliver of it.
All right, so let's finish up. But once you get past that, who do you think could be a consistent, reliable starter? Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan, Deshaun Watson's his own case.
Say it.
Oh, Jameis for sure. We like Jameis in that group. Ryan Tannehill, Jameis Winston, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Davis Mills, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Daniel Jones.
There it is.
Baker Mayfield, Kenny Pickett, Marcus Mariota, Mitchell Trubisky, Jimmy Garoppolo. That's right.
Mayfield, Wentz, Winston,
Ryan, Mac Jones.
I'm out of here.
Okay. Goodbye,
I got to go in a minute too.
Okay. Amy, how about you?
Winston, Daniel Jones, and that's it.
Mac Jones averaged more yards per attempt as a rookie than Justin Herbert, and same as Justin Herbert, more than Joe Burrow as a rookie. He had the highest passer rating in the NFC East last year, better than Josh Allen. He scored 21.2 AFC, sorry. 21.2 or more fantasy points in 3 of his last 6 games. The 3 that he didn't were against Buffalo, and one of those was in those terrible weather game. 2 against Buffalo, and one was Week 18 at Miami, where he was 20 of 30 for 261 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. He ranked 12th in intended air yards per pass attempt. He was not just dinking and dunking. He had the 12th most pass plays of 20-plus yards, just behind Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Mac Jones was a lot better than people realized last year. He's getting rave reviews. They added Devontae Parker. They added a rookie wide receiver as well.
Tyquan Thornton.
Mm-hmm. They're getting, hopefully, James White back. He might, I think he had a much better rookie season than people give him credit for. That's where I'll leave it. What do you think about him for 2022?
I have a hard time drafting him in a 1 QB league because there are so many other quarterbacks that you can take in round 13 plus that we talked about. Tua, Trevor Lawrence, Jameis, they're going to be there. I'm taking those guys ahead of Mac Jones. But I think there's a shot of him getting more work in this offense, which makes me a little even more nervous about Damian Harris and a little worried about Ramondre Stevenson, although Stevenson potentially could be someone who catches passes from Mac Jones. But the rave reviews seemed a little funny. You've never heard Belichick talk about Mac Jones like this, and he's done it on a number of different platforms. The reports from camp have been that he's been lights out. The reports from camp have been that he's connecting on passes deeper than 40 yards, which is something he didn't always do at Alabama.
He needed Matt Patricia.
And now it's Matt Patricia as the offensive play caller, which is weird. That part is definitely weird. But if they might say, all right, we're going to lean on Mac a lot more, there is room for him to have 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns this year. That puts him in the conversation as a top 12 fantasy quarterback. Crazy, but true.
I'd be very, very surprised if he had 30 touchdowns. I could see 4,000 yards, but they're still going to be so run heavy.
Okay.
Well, that's the thing. We don't know. It was easy to call them run heavy last year. They had a rookie quarterback. Now I think they might be more inclined to let him do a little bit more. If he stinks at it, then yeah, they revert back to being run heavy.
This has been our quarterback preview. Sorry, we didn't really get to spend time on guys like Zach Wilson, Daniel Jones, players who have some they're interesting.
I wish the camp reports were better for Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Because he's got a great receiving core.
Oh, and Daniel Jones, by the way, apparently, the offense has apparently been horrible.
Right.
Yeah.
So like there have been reports about how great Elijah Moore's been and how he made this amazing one-handed catch. It came from Flacco. So I'm a little bit right, but it was also in camp this year. Like I like Elijah Moore, but I would be through the roof on him if he had a quarterback that I could trust.
And I'll leave you with this little nugget here about Davis Mills. Davis Mills, only 3 quarterbacks scored more fantasy points than Mills against the Rams. They were Brady, Kyler, and Rodgers. He scored 24 points against the Rams. Only 2 quarterbacks scored more fantasy points against the Patriots. He scored 30 against the Patriots. Only Josh Allen, who actually did it twice, and Dak Prescott scored more. So that's pretty damn good for a rookie. And we will talk
some talent. They need another good pass catcher there to really give that offense a chance.
Thank you very much for tuning into this marathon quarterback preview. It's a big position. It's very important. We're going to have 2 running back episodes, 2 wide receiver episodes. Those are next week. But tomorrow, it's tight end talk. And we'll talk to you then on Fantasy Football Today.